Welcome to Content Clip 4. This is created for DAB 130 and we're going to talk about an innovation perspective for design today. In an earlier content clip we talked about the wicked problem aspect. So these are problems that are too complex to provide one single or simple solution to address them. And this also means, the wicked problem, that more stakeholders are involved, who all are going to need to be considered. What we're going to do today is we're going to have a look at what are different perspectives to have when you are going to innovate in such a complex context, for example, and how actually the design itself could be strategic as well. Here you can see the example. It's already a bit of a dated example, I would say, but this is the Wii mode from the Nintendo Wii game console. You probably know it. And actually what they did with this console, they single-handedly transformed the console market. And they did that because all of the other competitors before, and they themselves as well, focused on having standard graphics-based consoles. So they were competing on performance, for example. Well, what did Nintendo do with the Wii is they looked at how can we actually maybe change the interaction and the interface, which they did with the Wiimote, which could be traced and it worked via Bluetooth. So what they did with this one is actually redesign interaction and not focus so much on the graphic power of their system. And by this actually opening up the game console market for a much wider audience. So instead of competing on performance and visualizations and fighting for the same market segment, they actually try to do something different and increase the entire market segment. So with this one, they envisioned more children, for example, or older adults, or whoever was maybe not so interested before, but might be now with the Wii. Well, and history shows they were actually very successful with this. So by redesigning the interaction of how you could interact with games, you can actually have a very strategic and competitive advantage on the market. So what is this word innovation that we are actually talking about? Here you can see an excerpt from the Business Dictionary, and there they describe it as the process of translating idea or invention into a good or service that creates value or for which customers will pay. So actually innovation is not the same as the idea or the invention. Innovation is when you have done something with that idea or invention and have generated that value. So that's a really important distinction. So here you can see how that models out. So we are now in the course working towards ideas and designs. We are defining how we think that idea or design could create value, but it only is an innovation when it has created that value actually. Well, remember what we talked about. Value is not just money, it could be a lot of different things, and you will explore that further on in the course as well. But the thing that we are going to do with that idea or design, that's often referred to as the value proposition or the business model. And this is how you actually envision your design or idea to be realized, how you see the various partners take a certain role with regard to your design. This could be development, this could be implementation, could be marketing, but all these aspects of bringing an idea to realization is important to consider when you want to talk about innovation. And this is exactly what this course is about. You already have seen various perspectives, you have seen various stakeholders, and they need to be considered and they need to be consulted for you to get a complete picture of the impact of your design, but also to consider who is actually affected or has to change when my design is going to be implemented. We can talk about different types of innovation when we look at them. And in general, the division that we use is the one that sets incremental innovation across from disruptive innovation. And actually, incremental innovation refers to making small and safe steps in your innovation, and disruptive means that you deliberately take larger steps, take things that are maybe more technical advanced, but on the other hand are also a little bit more uncertain. Well, the model we're talking about looks like this from FEMA.com, and here they set two axes next to each other, the impact of the market versus the technology newness. And when you have low technological newness, but actually also low impact on the market, we talk about incremental innovation. It's gradual, it's continuous, it's making small changes, for example, going from the iPhone 7 to the iPhone 8. I mean, the product is a little bit better, but it's definitely incremental. When we have high impact on the market, but still low technological newness, we talk about sustaining in a certain market. So the product aims to really extend the market position that they have. You know, you have to provide something that is relevant, that matches that market, so it has a wide outreach. And we talk in this case about sustaining innovation. On the other end of the framework, we have high technological newness but low impact on the market. This is when we talk about radical technologies or radical innovations. And these are usually more techno-driven with a little bit uncertain technology that could potentially transform industries, but because we don't know exactly how it will fall or how it will work, they are considered radical innovations. Well, when we have both a high technological newness and a high impact on the market, we talk about disruptive innovation. So this means actually new rules are placed on the market, new business cases are released, and partners have to change or adapt to stay even in the market. So they really disrupt the market, and we talk about disruptive innovation in that case. But actually, if you dive into the grains of what types of innovations there are, it's much more nuanced than that. Of course, when we talk about incremental innovation, there could be all kinds of reasons to do that. Maybe the market request is there or the budget is there just to only do an incremental innovation. So we don't always need to look for that disruptive element, but we need to be very much aware of what type of innovation that we are positioning, so that we can talk about it and that we can align our value proposition as such. Here are some examples of different type of innovations you can think about. Innovation, like we said with design, can take place on different levels. We saw the Wii example where we saw really a product interaction innovation disrupting a market. But we see in different sectors, different approaches and different ways how disruption can happen if we want to focus on that. For example, in the hotel business, this is the Kurhaus in Scheveningen, has been disrupted quite a little bit. For example, by sites like Booking.com, where they actually try to offer a service for both the hotels and the customers. Here the customers can actually find the hotels much easier, can compare them much easier, and the hotels can get a wider audience for their hotel online. However, Booking.com is taking serious cuts of the profits from the hotels, which might question if this is actually something that is disrupting the hotel market in a positive way, or is it in the end something that might disrupt it in a negative way. And the same accounts, of course, in the same market about Airbnb. It's a website, you might know it, that offers people to kind of let out their own room, their spare room or their own house to people that want to visit the city or place for a holiday. It's an online platform, so you can upload your locations and you can find locations to sleep from all around the world. And here the idea is to have a more liberal and free and open experience for you to go on holiday. But one of the downsides, for example, it's happening now in Amsterdam, is that people are buying houses there just to make more profit by lending them out via Airbnb. So there actually Airbnb is negatively disrupting the housing market of Amsterdam. So these are two examples of how a certain business is not specifically changed or disrupted by a technological advancement, but actually a new service model that is incorporated. And these, of course, intentionally had very positive perspectives, also a profit perspective, of course. But now we are seeing that when they are longer in place, they actually also have negative disruptive effects. So try to think about this a little bit when you are designing or proposing certain ideas. Well, we mentioned the car industry before. We talked about Henry Ford and his perspective on user involvement. But one of the things that Henry Ford is actually known for is that he made the car available to the wider audience. So he actually invented the line production for cars. And this made the car much cheaper and much more accessible for a wider audience. So one of the examples in the car industry that's more recent is, of course, the introduction of the electric car. And here Tesla is definitely one of the front runners. And the Tesla case shows how disruption can work if we talk about technical advancement. When we take a look back at the car industry from the incremental versus disruptive model, we can see different kind of examples. And here, for example, looking at the incremental section, we see some car brands making really slight differentiations to their car models and bringing it to the market. Here you can see examples of the 6 Volkswagen generations and how they changed slightly. Volkswagen also released last year an electric car of their own, which we could consider, because the electric car market was already fully developed, as a way to sustain in that market. If we think about more radical developments, we can think of our own TUE Lightyear car, where a group of students is actually developing a car that can be powered by sunlight. But if we have to look at what party really disrupted the electric car market, we have to point at Tesla, because they have reinvented how electric cars could work and also the services that surround them. So one of the things that they really looked at and thought about is the experience when riding the car. For example, the central touchscreen display, which is not seen in the, other cars, but also how subtle lights, for example, are integrated into the dashboard. Another important aspect of Tesla's model is not just the cars themselves, but also the charging network that is integrated worldwide now. So basically, when you buy a car, it used to be free, but now you have to pay a subscription for it. When you buy a Tesla car, you can charge in this network cheaper and faster than with general public charging stations. And when it was free, it's actually a huge competitive advantage as they offered. Now you have to pay a monthly fee for that and even pay per charge a little bit. But still, this means that one of the risks of electric cars, that you're afraid you cannot get to your destination if it might be too far, is actually solved, because this network of charging stations is globally available now. Well, there's also some negative aspects about it. For example, a friend of me has a Tesla, we traveled with it, and then at night you have to still charge if you want to go on a long distance holiday. Alright, talking about different service innovation aspects, I want to highlight two more perspectives that we could take when thinking about innovation models. One is the freemium model. And with the freemium model, we mean that a service is considered free, but that there is also a possibility to enter a premium model. So freemium examples are, for example, these. So take, for example, Spotify. Listening music is free. Every 30 minutes you get a commercial, but if you pay 10 euros a month, you can actually get rid of the commercials. And so they try to lure you into a service, and when you really get used to the service, they try to offer that one thing or that several things that you think are really important to fully enjoy the service, but you have to pay a little fee fee for that. And that's actually how these companies try to get you into their business model and how they generate their profits. Another example is the long tail perspective. And basically the long tail marketing perspective looks at current advancements in selling your products, and they project the entire world as your market. And what they mean is that previously you were quite limited to selling your product basically to your surrounding, because you're producing a product in a certain region and it has to be shipped and it has to go out. But because we are all connected to each other now, and the internet marketplace is global at the moment, you can actually find your customers around the world. And what this means is that you can actually focus on much more niche products and services. And these niche products and services can then be a large enough market for you to be profitable around the world. An example is, for example, the minifigures from Lego. These specific models have a small fan base, so to say, but if you focus on it globally, it's actually enough that it makes sense to produce these very specific models. This is of course from the movie Kill Bill, which you have to watch. And then another example is the Kickstarter example, where basically you're crowdfunding your products. And also Kickstarter is a platform where people from around the world could buy very specific products. And maybe products that are not embraced by bigger companies, or maybe products that are not don't have a large enough regional or even continental marketplace suddenly become realized, because on a global scale they do have that market. That's it for this content clip. I hope I gave you some new perspectives on how to look at innovation. This could be used already in the create phase, but it's also definitely useful for you in your deliver phase.